In an isolated mansion high on the hills of Grey Valley, three orphaned sisters faced the mourning of their mother's loss while living under the distant gaze of an absent father. When a new woman enters their lives, bringing the promise of healing and love, they find themselves torn between the desire to move forward and the fear of being forgotten. The rich daughters were always crying. Until the new mother did something that changed the situation is a story of transformation, pain, and rediscovery, where healing emerges from the most unexpected places. Don't miss this emotional journey. Subscribe to the channel and like the video. The Montero mansion, perched high on the hills of Grey Valley, was as silent as a tomb, except for the crying. Three girls, orphaned for almost 2 years, lived there draped in silk, gold, and sorrow. Helena, the oldest at 10, was quiet, her eyes hollow. Clara, at 7, spoke to shadows, and Sophia, only 4, cried as though she carried the weight of the world. Their father, Augusto Montero, was a magnate known for turning dust into fortune, but a failure when it came to what truly mattered. Since the death of Beatrice, his wife, he had drowned himself in work and forgotten that he had children. They ate alone, played alone, and cried alone. Then a new presence arrived in the house. "This is Olivia," said Augusto one cold June morning, introducing a woman with a soft gaze and a sad smile. She will be your new mother." The word mother felt like blasphemy. The girls stared at her with a mix of hatred and fear. Olivia didn't move, didn't react. She simply looked at them as if she saw invisible wounds. That night, Helena woke to a whisper coming from the hallway. It wasn't an adult's voice. It was something thinner, like a child's. She followed, step by step, to her late mother's room. The door was ajar. There, sitting next to the old bed, Olivia was crying. But there was more. Clara, the middle one, was beside her, listening. And for the first time, in a long time, Clara didn't seem afraid. Helena recoiled. Something strange was happening, and she didn't know whether it was good or worse than everything they had already been through. Days passed, and the tension in the Montero mansion thickened. The girls grew more distant, if that was even possible. Olivia, though patient and calm, felt the walls around their hearts tightening with every attempt she made to connect. She had entered their lives at the most fragile of moments, and they viewed her with suspicion. To them, she was a stranger. To them, she was an intruder. But Olivia was no ordinary woman. She was not afraid of silence, nor of sorrow. She had come from a place of loss herself. A mother who had died when she was young, leaving her with only memories of love and emptiness. That grief had shaped her, tempered her, and made her understand things others could not. She saw the girls, not as lost causes, but as wounded souls who needed something more than a mother. They needed someone who could see through their pain without trying to erase it. One evening, while the mansion was bathed in the pale light of dusk, Olivia approached the girls in the garden. They were sitting by a stone fountain, their gazes fixed on the rippling water, as if they were waiting for something to emerge from it. "I know it's hard," Olivia said softly, sitting down on the edge of the fountain, her voice like a breeze. "But sometimes, crying is the only way to let go of what we hold inside." Helena turned to her, her expression unreadable. "You don't understand. You don't know what it feels like." Olivia didn't flinch. She simply looked at Helena, her eyes full of something deeper than empathy. "You're right," she whispered, "but I do know what it feels like to lose everything." For the first time, there was no anger in the girl's eyes. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but there was something, a glimmer of recognition. And for a brief moment, Olivia felt the weight of their grief lift just a little. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The days following Olivia's soft words by the fountain were quiet but not uneventful. A subtle shift had occurred, though neither side could fully grasp it yet. The girls began to watch Olivia with less mistrust, their eyes lingering on her in ways they hadn't before. But their hearts remained closed. They were still waiting for her to make a mistake, to fail them as others had done in the past. Olivia, however, was patient. She knew that trust could not be hurried. It had to be earned, and sometimes it needed a catalyst, a moment that would break the wall they had built so carefully around their hearts. One afternoon, while the girls were in the parlor, a package arrived for Olivia, wrapped in brown paper with no return address. It was an odd gift, one she had not been expecting. She opened it with a quiet curiosity. Inside was a small, delicate wooden box, ornately carved with intricate patterns. Helena, who had been observing from the doorway, approached her, cautious but intrigued. "What is it?" she asked. "A gift from an old friend," Olivia replied, her fingers lightly tracing the carvings on the box. "It's meant to be a memory keeper." The girls watched as Olivia opened the box, revealing a folded piece of old parchment inside. It was an odd relic, one that seemed out of place in the modern world. She gently unfolded it, revealing a series of handwritten words in a language none of them recognized. "What does it say?" Clara asked quietly, stepping closer. Olivia paused, her eyes softening as she gazed at the faded script. "It's an old poem, one that my mother used to say to me when I was feeling lost." The room fell into a deep silence as Olivia recited the words softly. The girls listened closely, though they didn't understand the meaning of the poem. What they felt was something deeper, something they couldn't name. For the first time in a long time, they felt as though someone was speaking to the sorrow inside them. Not with promises of change, not with words that sought to fix things, but with a simple understanding of what it meant to be broken. And in that moment, they realized that this woman, this stranger, might not be so strange after all. The days grew warmer as summer took its hold on the land. The mansion, once a place of shadowed grief, began to hum with a different energy. The girls, still cautious, started to gravitate toward Olivia in their own subtle ways. Helena, who had always been the most distant, began asking questions about the wooden box and the poem. Clara, the middle child, would sit with her for hours, listening to stories of Olivia's childhood, stories she could never tell her own mother. And Sophia, the youngest, followed Olivia wherever she went, as if she instinctively knew that the woman was her last hope. One afternoon, Olivia decided to take the girls on a walk through the garden at the back of the mansion. The estate was vast, with manicured hedges, towering trees, and perfectly symmetrical flower beds. But there was one corner, hidden behind a row of overgrown vines, that the girls had never seen: the forgotten garden. It was an eerie place, forgotten by time and by everyone else who had lived in the mansion. The flowers were wild and tangled, and the once pristine statues were covered in moss. But there was something hauntingly beautiful about it. As they walked through the garden, Olivia spoke. "This place has been here for as long as the house itself. It's where I used to come when I needed to be alone, to think, to heal." "Why is it so neglected?" Clara asked, her voice small. Olivia's eyes softened. "Sometimes, when people are hurt, they forget the things that once brought them joy. They let them fall away, like the flowers in this garden." Helena, who had been silent until then, suddenly knelt by a patch of wild roses. She brushed her fingers over a bloom, and for a moment, the weight of her sorrow seemed to lift. Maybe this garden needs someone to care for it," she whispered. Olivia smiled softly. "Maybe it's you, Helena." And as the sun set behind them, casting long shadows across the forgotten garden, the girls felt a strange peace settle within them. It wasn't much, but it was the first time they had shared something together, something more than sadness, more than grief. It was a tiny step toward healing, The next few weeks unfolded like a fragile tapestry being slowly woven together, one thread at a time. The girls, though still guarded, began to show signs of change. They spent more time with Olivia, and their days were filled with tentative smiles and shared moments. Yet beneath the surface of their budding bond, there was a secret that none of them dared to speak aloud, not even to Olivia. Helena, the oldest, carried a burden heavier than any of them knew. She had seen the look in her father's eyes the night Olivia arrived, a look that spoke of loss and loneliness, but also of something else. It was a look of necessity, a look that said Olivia wasn't just there to be a mother. She was there to fill a void, to take a place that belonged to someone else, someone they had all lost. Helena spent sleepless nights in the darkness, replaying the memories of her mother, Beatrice, a woman who had once been the sun in their lives. The warmth, the laughter, the love, and then all of it had gone cold, like a storm sweeping through their world. And Olivia would never be Beatrice. Helena knew that. One night, when the house was still, Helena couldn't bear it anymore. She slipped out of her room, her heart pounding in her chest, and made her way to the study, where she knew her father often worked late into the night. Augusto Montero sat at the grand desk, his face illuminated by the soft glow of a single candle. He looked up as Helena entered, his tired eyes reflecting years of pain. "Helena," he said softly, his voice hoarse. "What are you doing up?" I need to know something, Father," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you bring her here?" Augusto didn't answer immediately. His gaze dropped to the papers in front of him, as if the answer was written somewhere within the ink on the page. But then, slowly, he looked back at her. His eyes were full of guilt, regret, and something deeper, something Helena couldn't quite name. "I thought," he began, but stopped himself. "I thought maybe if I brought her here, it would make things easier. That the girls, that you..." His words faltered, and he finally stood, walking over to the window. "I thought you needed her, Helena. I thought I needed her." Helena's heart twisted. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to scream at him for replacing their mother so quickly, for expecting them to just accept Olivia without question. But the anger didn't come, only the weight of the truth. Olivia was not a replacement. She was a possibility, and maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop living in the past. The days following her conversation with her father were filled with a quiet tension that neither Helena nor Augusto could shake off. Helena had learned something crucial that night, that Olivia wasn't here by accident. She was here because, like everyone else, they needed her. Perhaps more than they realized. But Helena, ever the skeptic, couldn't let go of the ache in her chest, the deep well of grief that seemed to fester with every attempt to move on. She knew her father still wasn't fully present, not emotionally. He had lost himself in work long before Beatrice had passed, and now he was only trying to fill a hollow space with a woman who could never replace their mother. That much was clear. Yet in the midst of all this confusion, there was one undeniable truth. Olivia was trying. Every day she tried. She gave the girls a piece of herself, no matter how small, no matter how hesitant. She made meals with care, sat in silence with them when words didn't come, and most of all, she never expected anything in return. And that, in itself, was a form of love. One afternoon, as the sun hung low in the sky, Olivia took the girls to the garden again. The forgotten garden, now less neglected, had become their quiet retreat. It was a place where their grief could mingle with the beauty of nature, where they could simply be without the weight of their pasts hanging over them. Today, however, something was different. Olivia had brought a small shovel, a trowel, and a handful of young plants. "We're going to make something together," Olivia said, her voice light. "This garden is a part of us now. But to make it our own, we need to put a little bit of ourselves into it. Helena, Clara, and Sophia stood around her, each of them holding a small plant in their hands. It was a simple task, digging small holes, planting flowers and watching them take root. But it was also something more. It was an act of creation, an act of change. Helena, her heart still heavy but her hands steady, carefully dug a hole and planted a small rose bush. It was a quiet, simple act, but it carried with it something far greater than just dirt and petals. It was a symbol of growth, of healing, of the possibility of new beginnings. As the day wore on, the girls worked together side by side with Olivia. They didn't talk much, but there was something in the air. Something shifted in that forgotten garden. A silent revolution, born from shared effort and small moments of trust. The garden would never be the same, and neither would they. The days seemed to blur together in a peaceful rhythm that had never existed in the Montero mansion before. With every passing moment, the walls around the girls' hearts cracked just a little more. Each time they spent in the garden, with Olivia by their side, they found pieces of themselves they thought had long been lost. Helena, once so guarded, began to share more. She still didn't fully trust Olivia, but she realized that the woman wasn't a replacement for their mother. She was something new, something they could create together, something that could help them navigate their grief and find a way to live in the world again. But just as the fragile bond between them was beginning to take root, an unexpected twist threatened to unravel it all. It started with a letter. One morning, as the girls were playing in the garden, a servant arrived with a letter for Olivia. The paper was thick and official, with a wax seal that was foreign to Helena. Olivia's face, as she opened it, went pale. She held it in her hands for a long moment, her fingers trembling. Helena noticed immediately. She walked closer, her curiosity piqued. "What is it?" Helena asked, trying to keep the worry from her voice. Olivia swallowed hard, folding the letter back carefully before turning to her. "It's from my family. They want me to return. They believe it's time for me to come home." Helena's heart sank. She had known deep down that this would happen. She had always known that Olivia couldn't stay forever, that everyone had their own lives, their own places to go. The idea that Olivia could leave them now, just as they had started to heal, was a blow she hadn't been prepared for. "But why now?" Helena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why now, when things are finally getting better?" Olivia looked down, her eyes filled with sadness. "I don't have a choice, Helena. My family is in trouble and they need me. I didn't want to go, not like this, but I have to." Helena's mind raced. The possibility of losing Olivia after everything they had been through, the fragile trust, the quiet moments, the bond they were slowly forming, seemed unbearable. Before she could say anything more, Clara and Sophia appeared at the garden gate, their faces alight with the innocence of children who didn't yet understand the weight of what was happening. Olivia turned to them, her expression softening. "Girls, I need to tell you something. My family has called me back. I have to leave." Clara's face faltered, and for the first time, Helena saw the depth of her vulnerability. Sophia clung to her, not understanding, but feeling the tension in the air. Helena, still standing there, felt the weight of her own emotions press against her chest. She didn't want Olivia to go, but she knew. She knew what was at stake. Sometimes love meant letting go, and sometimes it meant trusting that even in the absence, something would remain. The air was thick with unspoken words as Olivia stood in the garden, holding the letter in her trembling hands. The girls, Clara and Sophia, stood silently by the gate, waiting for the storm that would soon break. Olivia had made the decision to leave. She had to. Her family needed her, and there was no avoiding the call. But as she looked at the girls, each of them with eyes filled with confusion and a subtle fear, She wondered if leaving would shatter everything they had worked toward. Would they understand? Could they forgive her for leaving them so soon? Helena, who had remained silent up until this point, stepped forward. Her eyes were hard, her heart still uncertain, but there was something else, a quiet resolve. Maybe this is what's supposed to happen, Helena said, her voice steady, though her heart thudded in her chest. Maybe it's not about you staying forever. Maybe it's about us learning to stand on our own. Olivia's eyes filled with unshed tears as she looked at Helena. She had always known that the bond between them would not come easily, but hearing the girl speak like this, so mature, so wise, made Olivia's heart ache. "You don't have to leave, Olivia," Helena continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "But if you do, I want you to know something. You helped us. You helped me." The words were simple, but they meant everything. For the first time, Helena didn't just see Olivia as an intruder, as someone who might one day leave. She saw her as a person who had come into their lives with nothing but kindness, and who had changed everything without asking for anything in return. Olivia reached out, pulling Helena into an embrace that felt long overdue. She held her tightly, whispering, "You're stronger than you know." Clara, who had been quiet throughout the conversation, suddenly spoke. "Will you come back?" she asked softly, her voice full of innocence and longing. Olivia paused, the question hanging in the air. "I don't know, Clara," she said gently, "but I'll carry each of you with me wherever I go. You will always have a place in my heart." As she turned to say goodbye to Sophia, who had been silently clinging to her, Olivia felt a pang of regret. But there was no more time. The decision had already been made. With a heavy heart, Olivia left the garden and walked toward the front of the house. The girls watched her go, feeling both loss and acceptance in equal measure. And as the sun set over the hills, casting a golden glow over the mansion, Helena stood alone in the garden. She placed her hand on the rose bush she had planted, feeling its new shoots brushing against her fingers. In that moment, she realized something. Life would go on. There would be pain, but there would also be growth. The garden, once forgotten, had become a place of new beginnings, and so had they. As the shadows lengthened and the stars began to twinkle above, Helena whispered to the night, "We'll be okay."